What's up? How you doing? Here we are, Sunday evening. Sun's going down. Very nice outside today. Nice low humidity, very dry. Just got back from a birthday party, and I was thinking, one thing I miss about cars that used to be a standard feature now doesn't exist anywhere: power steering. Well, I know they have imitation power steering, everything's tight, but I wish they had an option in a vehicle where you could push a button, get real power steering, or push another button and get the kind of power steering we have these days where it's tighter. And I understand, I'm a fan of the tight power steering, power assist, or whatever they call it now, because in the old days, real power steering, you would overcorrect. In a situation where you had a car coming onto you, you would overcorrect, and the car would, and you'd end up in a ditch. So I like the sports car type power steering that they have in today's cars, but I do miss power steering like the old days, the 70s. I remember when I was a kid, my father would be in the station wagon, and he would use one finger, the index finger usually, to make a turn. Want it to go right, stick the finger right in the steering wheel column, spin it. No effort at all, it was easy. Nowadays, you try that with the one finger, you'll do 2-3 times, and then after that, your finger will be sore. It's different kind of steering today, so I wish I had the option when you feel lazy, you want to drive, but you don't want to put a lot of energy in it. I like to turn the wheel with my finger, like my father used to do. They can get rid of that manual thing that they have in cars these days, the imitation stick shift, where you hit a button and then the car won't switch gears until you push a button to switch gears. That's garbage, that's fake. First of all, the whole fun of driving a stick shift was changing the position of the stick. This hitting the button thing, or pushing the stick up or something to change gears, that does not interest me. I miss stick shifts. I miss the manual transmission. And back in the old days, all cars pretty much came with the option. Station wagons had the option of buying it with a manual transmission. I remember I knew somebody who had a 442 Oldsmobile. I forget what year it was 72 or something, maybe even 73. And his car was a manual transmission, a standard. So I remember one time I was looking inside the car, and I was used to seeing, park, reverse, neutral, drive, automatic, like my father had on his Impala station wagon. And I was looking at this 442 Oldsmobile, and I said, what's that thing on the floor? What is that for? And my father looks, he goes, oh, that's a standard. I go, what's the difference? Now, the difference, he could have said, well, you have to switch gears manually. And my father said, well, that the car that has that kind of a system, that's more steady when you drive. I don't even know what that means, more steady. Steadiness is what? Based on the shocks and the struts. So that's the answer he gave me, and then after that I asked him again the next day. I said, what does that do? And he's like, it's just more steady when you drive. So, I don't know if he knew. But anyway, I miss power steering, real power steering. Anybody born in, like the 70s or something and was in a car when they were a kid, they know what I'm talking about. They put the finger, here's a steering wheel. That's the bar that goes across. They would put their finger right there and spin the wheel, spin the wheel. And then I remember one time I went with my father. Well, I went many times with him, but this specific time I went with him. He wanted to buy another car, and that was the time when they got rid of real power steering and they had power assist. So my father gets in the station wagon. I think he was looking at a Mercury Marquis or something like that, or a Colony Park. I think it was a Colony Park, and we went for a test drive. Dude in the back, and when I got into this car, being used to the full-size station wagons, they felt like real cars. Then we get into this 80s one, and it kind of looked like Fisher-Price got involved with the design. So we're in there, my father was driving. It was like, the thumb was like this kind of driving. It's the way my father drove. So we come to a corner, he's going to take a right, and he tried to do that finger thing, and he spun it around, and then he says, how come the wheel is so tight? Don't you have power steering, the option? And the guy goes, oh, that's power steering, it's actually power assist, he goes. My father goes, oh. I go, well, you're going to have to stop doing the finger turning. And not only that, I remember I took driver's ed, and my driver's ed teacher specifically brought up that technique and said, don't do that when you go and take the test, you will fail. So I go, didn't say it to me, he said it to the whole class, but yeah, I go, yeah, I kind of figured this was kind of like illegal. But anyway, so we get there, he ended up buying that car, but there was no more spinning it with your finger. Yeah, they made them, I'm telling you, Fisher-Price got involved with the design. These cars, to me, you know, coming from the 70s with the real muscular station wagons, they seem like they got a toy company to help them design the interior and the exterior. It's like wimpier. And they shrank the engines from like a 357, it became a 305 or a 302. You know, they still had power, but not like the old days. So, yeah, that's it. I'm on a one-man mission to bring back power steering. But to have the option, because sometimes, even to me, I remember one time I was on this road, it's like a VFW type road, and something happened, I had to like avoid it, and I was driving a station wagon with a 400 engine. This was a Ford LTD 400. But the steering was like, you know, really loose steering, 70s style. And I remember I went this way and I overcorrected when I came back, and it felt like the car was on the ocean. Yeah, so anyway, that's how it was back then. The power steering was more impressive. But yeah, you should put the option in there. And bring back some cars at least, maybe Jeep, maybe some F-150s or whatever, with the stick shift option. I'd get that. Problem is, when you're in traffic, up, down with the clutch. You know, and I remember a few years ago, I remember many years ago actually, I was reading Motor Trend magazine, which is one of my favorite magazines, and they were talking about how they were releasing clutchless manual transmission cars. I'm like, well, that's half the fun. Half the fun is messing with the clutch. Just switching this up and down. And because I'm a fan of Peterbilt, love Peterbilt, Kenworth, I watched the videos where they're driving manual transmission Peterbilts, and they have like 20 gears. I don't even know. It's like 30 gears, 18 gears. They got this big stick up here, and they're like dun, 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 up and down. But you got to keep track of what number you're on. And then they have a button you hit, and it goes from like 9 to 18. Another number goes from 18 to 27. But that's what I want. I want like to meet somebody who owns a Peterbilt truck, a new one. Could be an old one, doesn't matter. The ones that have the house in the back. And I want to drive that a little bit. The big wheel, be like BJ and the Bear. Get on the CB. Breaker 19, shepherd to lost sheep, shepherd to lost sheep. But yeah, I miss power steering. I'd love though Peterbilt. Somebody came up to me, and if they came up to me and they said, hey, I got a 2023 Peterbilt truck, you want to drive it? I'd love to hear that. Yeah. But yeah, I remember when my father bought that 1980 station wagon. It was hard to get used to it. Like, is this for real? I mean, it just felt like toyish. Now, if you look at those cars, they don't look like a toy anymore, because we have cars that are really toys now. That still had some, power to it back then. Be going somewhere, on a trip or something. The very last thing to go on top of the station wagon was my bike. Father would grab that, put on top of the rack. He had this knowledge about knots. He was able to do these knots that could easily come apart. If you pulled one little piece of it, it would come apart, but you couldn't take it off if you didn't pull that one piece of the rope. So the bike was tied down in all different angles. And then we'd get to the destination, and I don't care what time it was. Could have been like 11 o'clock at night. He would take the bike down, no questions asked. I would jump on the bike and disappear into the darkness. Disappear. Not like now where they'd be calling the cops. You know, a missing kid, missing child. Back then it was like, yeah, they'll be back. He'll be back in a little bit. That's the way I liked it. We're getting chicken wings tonight. I love chicken wings with hot sauce. And I'll tell you why. This wasn't something I came up with. It kind of, something happened that influenced me to come up with it. I was watching Bill Burr, comedian. I enjoy listening to his comedy. It's, you know, one of those things. David Chappelle, love David Chappelle. But anyway, tonight I was listening to Bill Burr, not doing comedy, but he's on this thing, Hot Ones. It's like there's a table and there's a bunch of hot sauces, and there's a guy talking to him, and he's promoting something, and they're talking back and forth. And while they're talking, they have the chicken wings, and each sauce gets progressively hotter. By the time they're kind of towards the end of the interview, they're both, you know, red and teary-eyed and coughing. They got the milk here. So I was watching that, and I was looking at that, and it kind of got my appetite going for chicken wings. And I bought the Atomic variety. They have the hot ones, but then Atomic is off the charts, so I want to have some of that. Very excited about that. The other thing I miss, and this isn't for all vehicles, but most of them, I miss the full tire, the spare tire. If you got a flat, you could pull over on the highway. You had a nice jack. It was like a metal thing like that with grooves in it, and a, you know, like a stick like this. You put it in and you jack up the car. It was solid. You pull off the flat tire, and then you put the new tire, which was identical to the tire you took off, only didn't have a hole in it. Now they have these donuts, miniature donuts. It's almost like children's tires for their little vehicles. And you put that on, and it says do not exceed 50 miles an hour. I don't know, I don't like that. They made cars so small they can't even fit a real tire in there anymore. So yeah, but one thing they did do that I appreciate, back in the 70s, the cars all had a speedometer that went to 120 miles an hour. So my father's station wagon, that car probably has a 20-mile-an-hour speedometer. Anyway, my father's station wagon, which was a 1973 Chevy Impala, that had a speedometer, and it went from this side to this side all the way across 120, 0 to 120. Had that big red needle, and I loved that thing, 120. Then all of a sudden in the 80s, somebody said, you know, we could save some money. We'll cut down the speedometer numbers to 85. And it just, the impression was that the car didn't have the muscle anymore. I was like looking at it, I go, 85. Even if it didn't do 120, the fact that it said 120 impressed me. And then they brought it down to 85. It's like you were getting ripped off. Then they brought back the 120. My Suburban right now goes to 120. Yeah, I don't like that, 85. And then I remember there was a period of time when they had some computer chip that you couldn't go past a certain speed. The car would start trembling like an old man who was angry. So now they don't have that anymore. And I assume, you know what they say about assuming, but I assume that that chip you could remove if you knew where it was, take it out, and it wouldn't do that anymore. You could go, you know, full speed. But that speedometer, 85, had my Apollo Ross 5-speed bike could do 85. Yeah, that's it. That's my point of view. They should bring back more manual transmission vehicles. Specifically, the Jeeps should all have that option. the Ford F-150, the Sierra, Chevy, Silverado, Dodge Ram, should, you know, I give you that option. Now, I go to dealerships. I'm always looking in the window. I don't see anything that's a standard anymore. I don't see anything like that. It's like we don't know how to drive anymore. In the old days, everybody kind of knew how to drive a stick shift. Nowadays, anybody under the age of 50 has no idea how to drive a stick shift. They'll burn your clutch out. That's the other thing. If you had somebody visiting you who was driving an automatic in their town, and then you had a standard, you couldn't say, hey, you want to borrow my car? Or if you had two cars, you want to borrow that car, don't use it, because you knew they would burn out your clutch. Yeah, very few people drive standard anymore. But the thing is, it's enjoyable, unless the traffic situation. You know, I don't like that. I had a 5-speed. I think it was a 4-speed. Anyway, I had a manual twice. Drove that car, 2 cars, everywhere. But then when I was stuck in traffic, it was first gear, second gear, first gear, second gear, up and down, up and down, up and down. The desert is the best place. Oh, that sounds powerful. Yeah, I don't know what that was. That sounds like it has a manual transmission. Yeah, so for the automakers out there, get rid of the manual hybrid, automatic manual hybrid thing that you guys have in there where you push a button to change gears. Nobody uses that. Nobody. It's a novelty. You use it once when you buy the car, and then you're like, that's ridiculous. Put back the feature of full power steering. You could have a button that goes back and forth. If you want sports car power steering, you hit that. I would have that most of the time, but every once in a while, when you feel a little lazy, you want to do the finger turning, have that option. Have that option. You'll sell cars. Listen to the public. The other thing is, I'd like to see bigger cars. Bigger cars. Now, a lot of these now, you make an electric. Make the electric big. Make them big. Nice and roomy. Think of the 70s. Think of the 70s. What else can you do? Full tire. Spare tire should be full. You know, that's how it should be. You shouldn't have to go to a gas station after to change it out. And then a long time ago, I made a video about having 5 wheels on a car. So you wouldn't have the 5th wheel touching all the time. It would be a solid rubber wheel in the middle of the car, underneath in the middle, and that would be for emergency braking situations. So you're ready to crash, you hit the brakes hard, 4 wheels, anti-lock brakes. The 5th wheel would be this big, wide rubber, solid rubber wheel that would fold down into the pavement, concrete or asphalt or whatever, and that would be extra, you know, strength to stop the car. Nice, you know, about that wide, and it would go down into the road, and that would give extra stoppage power. So maybe from 0 to 60 to 0, it would be 50 feet, 40 feet. They should have that option. But it would be automatic, depending on how hard you hit the brake. Wouldn't go down all the time. It wouldn't be like a casual stop at a red light. It would be when it was an emergency. You'd hit the brakes hard, and then that 5th wheel would come out from the bottom and give you that extra braking power. Got to compete, you know. You should come up with new ideas. I'm talking about these companies out there that make these cars, the same old things. So that's it. I know there was something else I wanted to mention. I'm trying to think what it was here. There's something. Anyway, that'll have to do for now. We're gonna eat soon. Been seeing opossum, as they say, activity lately out here. Like, there's a big one that roams around, and then I'm assuming there's like at least 3 little ones about that big. The other night I was out here, it was probably, I don't know, midnight, and I startled one of them. It was a little baby one, and it heard me going this way and it ran, and I saw this little baby thing. One time years ago, one fell into the pool, and it was alive. It was swimming back and forth. I had to grab it by the tail. I put it in a box and I brought it into a area where, you know, to me it seemed like it would be better off. Now I don't bother them anymore because somebody told me that possums kill rats. So I said, what's you know, what's better, the rats or the possums? I prefer the possums, so I don't bother them anymore. But I have a humane trap. It opens up, you put a piece of bread on the inside, they step on it's like a metal thing. They step on it, it shuts the door behind them, doesn't hurt them, and then you can transport them somewhere else. So that's it. That's it. Another week coming up. You know what else annoys me about new cars? The thin skin they have. Thin skin, the exterior. In the old days, you'd go to a party or something, your parents would go inside, and then a bunch of your friends would sit on your parents' car on the hood. Nothing would happen. If they tried that today, if you had a bunch of people sit on the hood of your car today, it would dent it. You know, they'd get off of it and there'd be a valley in the hood. Now, you throw a ball or some tennis ball or whatever, you look at it as a dent. Somebody leans on it the wrong way, there's a dent. It's cheap. In the old days, if you took a car and you put it on a golf range, driving range, and people started, you know, hitting the balls and hitting your car, the only thing that would get damaged were the windows. Everything else, the body would be the same. You wouldn't be able to tell that there was a dent. It was like solid metal. You know, that's what they've done. They've thinned out the metal, and then they've said, well, we've improved on the gas mileage. That's not impressive. You know what they should have done? They should have experimented with different blends of metal where you have strong and light at the same time. Instead, what they did is they just made it thinner. Thinner. Now something accidentally falls on your car and you look and you go, ah, there's a dent. Things dent so easily now. That's not, you know, you spend all that money buying a car and an acorn falls from a tree and it leaves a dent on the car. That's ridiculous. So that's what I would do. You know, I would try and find some kind of carbon fiber that's reasonably priced, and I'm sure if somebody invents something like that and they said, hey, GM or Toyota or Ford is willing to buy, you know, thousands of tons or millions of tons or whatever of this product, I'm sure the price would go down. It's only expensive now because they only make like a, you know, a little 2x2, you know, a sheet. But that annoys me that they've cheapened them to the point where a small amount of force will dent the exterior of a vehicle or a motor car. So that's it. Oh, one more thing. These horns. So what does the sound of a horn have to do with the size of a car? So I remember in the old days, you had a big car, the horn, what was it, an F flat or something? It was bassy, it was powerful, and you go, okay, gotta get out of the way. Then as cars got smaller and smaller, the horns got wimpier and wimpier. Get these beep beep, you know, little Volkswagen horns now, and then you know it's a little car. They should have powerful horns regardless of how small your car is, right? So if your car is like a 2x2, it should have like a Mack truck horn. That you want to get people's attention that you're coming. You don't want it to sound like a bicycle horn. That annoys me. You know, like my truck has a regular horn. It sounds like a horn from 1974. But then there's other cars, when they beep at you, it sounds like a Volkswagen Bug, Beetle, whatever. They should give you the option where you can go light, medium, or large sound. You know, you hit the extra heavy bass horn and it'll get people's attention. Yeah, there was a time when people would change their horns out and put musical tunes. You know, my father had some La Cucaracha horn. He'd stop to pick somebody up and he'd hit that. It was like playing a tune. So they're cool, but he also had a switch on the bottom. You know, if somebody said to him, "Hey, what is that? What do you got there?" He would flip it over and he would beep the regular way. Anyway, that's it. I think my chicken wings are here, and I'm gonna go eat.